there, my name is Hydrogen Heather, and we are very glad to have you here with us for today's experiment of the day. We are going to be creating real fossils using real materials from outside, and we've tried to keep the ingredients very simple. So if you've already called up the lesson plan, you know that all you need is about a cup of flour, a cup of salt, 3/4 cup of water, and then you may have noticed that we included a teaspoon of alum in there. And if your household is like mine, we had no alum on hand, but a little bit of quick research led us to find that you can also use cream of tartar, and we did have that on hand. And if you don't have cream of tartar, just go with the flour and the salt. All this does is add a little bit of a hardening agent, and then I did a little bit of further research and found that alum is sometimes used to add a bitter taste to the clay, so that if you have a child who always wants to put everything in their mouth, that they are deterred from doing so by the taste. Right, we are not going to put this in our mouth, okay? We are doing science, so nothing is going to go in our mouth. Good question, buddy. Okay, so here we go. We mixed everything on camera so that we mixed it off camera so that we weren't taking any time away from the actual experiment. So I'm going to give each scientist a big chunk of dough, and what I would like the four of you to do is take your chunk of dough and kind of flatten it into a pancake. But I want you to pay attention to Daniel and I, because we're not gonna make a pancake that takes up the whole plate. We want our dough to be nice and thick, okay? So about the size of an Eggo waffle, or maybe even just a little bit smaller. Daniel, can we show the camera ours? Oh, nice job on flattening that pancake. So we're looking for something about this size. And then right before we went on camera, I sent my children outside and I told them to just find some dead plant material off of the ground. So they came back with a pine cone, some dead leaves, and then we have a pine tree right out in front of our house. So they picked up some old brown needles that had fallen off this winter. And what we're gonna do is we're each just gonna choose whatever we want, and we're gonna make an imprint of it and then put it back so that if somebody else wants to use it, they can use it as well. And then if you have little ones, we have a couple of dinosaurs hanging around the house, so this is fun too, and we'll even talk about that. So right now, here's the process for imprinting, okay? You can pretend that something has fallen into a muddy creek bed, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna press and then very gently lift out, and what you should get is an imprint of whatever you chose. So go ahead and choose a material. All right. You can even do his feet. Yep, so you're gonna press in and then very gently press back out. So you can see that Olivia got 4 perfect footprints. Nevaeh actually got footprints and a tail print. Daniel, oh wow, buddy. He got a perfect leaf print, and then Savannah got a perfect pine cone print. And before you go any further, let me just ask, if you were a dinosaur and you walked through a big muddy bog, a big mud pit, if you walked through, what would you leave behind? You would leave footprints behind. And actually, this is exactly how we find a lot of evidence of what came before us. We can look at the prints that are left behind, because if the creek bed or if the pile of mud dries and then gets covered up, the prints can last literally for more years than you can even imagine. So right now, I'm gonna give these guys about 30 seconds to get a few more materials, put a few more imprints in, and then here's what's really important. If it's not perfect, that is okay. In fact, let me ask, Olivia, as you're putting those in, do you think that if an animal walks through mud and makes footprints, do you think that those footprints are going to be perfect?
No.
No.
It's probably going to be messy because they're trudging walking on the ground.
Right, they're walking in real time. They're tracking their feet, but it might be messy. So if your children are doing this, really remind them that they do not need perfection. There is no such thing as perfect prints, so if it's not perfect, that actually makes it more real to life. Now, after we've made a few prints, that's when we take our hands off. And then what we're gonna wanna do is set these next to an open window, or if it's not warm enough to have the windows open, set it next to a window where we can get a lot of sun. And then that fossil is going to become rock hard, or I should say the clay or the mud is going to become rock hard, and the fossil is going to be preserved forever. Now, before we go, a little real world relevance, especially for right here in DFW. You are not going to remember this because it happened when you were maybe about 3 or 4 years old, but a few years back, we went through a severe drought. Those of you adults watching might remember the last drought that we went through, and out in the Grapevine area, a creek bed dried up, but it dried to the extent that the floor of that creek had not been seen in many, many, many years. And it turns out that there were dinosaur footprints right through that creek bed that nobody living right now had ever seen. But this drought backed up that creek and dried it up to the point that these prints were exposed. So this kind of imprinting actually happens in nature all on its own, and then sometimes we find some absolute treasures that we did not even know were there. So that's what the drought did for us quite a few years back. So I hope that you've enjoyed the fossil imprinting. Share it with your friends. It's super simple, and we will see you right back here for tomorrow for the experiment of the day.